Hey, what's up, guys? What's up, everyone? It's the second episode of our English podcast, Rusty Talks podcast, English special version. Second podcast, second episode with Ian Allardyce.
Thanks. Yeah, back again.
Yes, it's my honor to have you here.
In the break, I just told you that Alien 3 has got the best use of the word wanker in it.
Yes, yes, you did.
We were talking about that.
Yeah, I learned that word from watching football. Somehow.
Of course, yeah.
Because the fans.
Yeah, but you don't often see it in Hollywood movies. So when there's a guy getting chased by a xenomorph and then he turns around and says, "You wanker!" That's why I like Alien 3. So
that's a good reason. Very good reason.
Exactly.
I left my ass off when it's kind of different, but I left my ass off when when John Wick was called Baba Yaga. But because I'm not sure if what that means the same thing for Westerners, but for us. Because we have we have a lot of Russian and Soviet influence, right? Mongolians. And Baba Yaga is this wild witch, old lady witch.
Yeah.
It's in the mythos or whatever.
Yeah.
But for us, it existed like for a long time, right? We have Russian influence and we knew about what Baba Yaga is growing up. And then when they mentioned John Wick as Baba Yaga, we laughed our asses. It was great.
Wow, I didn't know that. So, yeah. Next time I watch John Wick, I haven't watched John Wick 2 yet, so
it's great.
Yeah,
I loved Common in it. Who are your favorite rappers? Do you listen to hip hop?
I'm more of a grunge man, rock man, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I don't really know much about newer hip hop. I'm more of a rock guy.
Cool.
I like, you know.
Who are your favorite bands?
My favorite bands. Well, when I was like really into rock, it was like in the grunge period, so it'd be like Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, Smashing Pumpkins, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rage Against the Machine, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, that whole period. Nice. But then more recently, I really like to listen to Alt J, of course Radiohead, during the whole period. I really like Doves. It's a British band from Manchester, and Elbow was another British band. Cherry Ghost. So
I remember Red Hot Chili, but the Californication music video.
Yeah,
I remember that a little, you know, like being.
Well, that album was particularly awesome because basically they're going off from film here, but anyway, their guitarist was like Frusciante, Dave Frusciante, was like. Nearly died from heroin and what have you, and they made one album without him and it just wasn't the same, and they had a big break and they almost split up and there was almost no more Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then he kind of recovered and everything and they brought him back into the band, and so then when they released that album, you know, if you listen to it, it's just so like joyous because like he's back and you know, and the tracks and his whole guitar style. It's the band
again, right?
Yeah, it's just so many great tracks on that album.
I love their early work too. It's Anthony Kiedis has a lot of influence from hip hop. Yeah, and of course their early works were in the 90s, right? Yeah, when hip hop was blooming itself, and he kind of raps in his songs, right? Especially in his early ones.
Blood Sugar Sex Magic is like, well, they were originally like a kind of funk band. If you listen to their first album, it's like really funky, you know, like Flea's Basic, and then they went more rocky later on. But I always like, here's a question for you, little pop quiz.
All right.
See if you can figure out what ties together two movies: Point Break, and The Big Lebowski.
What ties those two?
Yeah.
I'm gonna fail here. What is it?
We've just been talking about it. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah, Anthony Kiedis is in Point Break. He's like he's one of those surfer like punk assholes. You know, they fight on the beach.
He's in those two films.
Yeah, he goes. He's got this line. He goes. The guy goes, so this is, Keanu goes, so this is where you tell me the bums like me shouldn't surf the beach, and you're going to tell me, and then Anthony Kiedis goes, nope, that would be a waste of time. We're just going to fuck you up. Yeah. So he's in, and then Flea is in Big Lebowski.
Oh, okay.
So there's a pub quiz question for you.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I felt that one.
I've given away the answer.
That's nice. I felt that one.
Yeah.
It's been. I've watched Big Lebowski. Both of them a really long time ago. I really should watch them again.
I tried to watch Big Lebowski every like year or two.
FBI.
Yeah.
All right, back to the topic. So Before this screening of, actually during the screening of They Sing Up on the Hill, you actually screened a short film called Wonderful Flight before the film. Yeah. And let's talk about that film, how it came to be, and the inspirations and the story behind it.
Amgar and I, actually, it's our second short film. We made a previous short film called The Good Old Days, which is also good. That's a movie, like a kind of Mad Max post-apocalyptic, set in the time when oil has run out and there's no more benzene.
Oh, okay.
We filmed it in Gortok, which is near Terelj, and that time that was like a derelict, like a ghost town. And funnily enough, people moved back there now, and they it was really cool. Like, it was in winter, but we gave it like a kind of Mad Max style. Then we made The Wonderful Flight together, and that film came about just because we just wanted to do a short. And a piece of advice that I could maybe give to young filmmakers is that sometimes a good way to start a project and a good way to decide what to do is the old corny, the cheesy thing of Hollywood movies where it starts and it says based on a true story.
Yeah.
Because doing it based on a true story, if you can find, if you know some true thing that happened, even the word based.
Yeah, based. It's not...
It is the tricky thing, but it gives you just somewhere to start, somewhere to begin, and it helps you kind of focus your ideas. So we knew of this story, which a lot of people were talking about with some other studios, and apparently some people made a documentary about these sad story about those two young boys in 1996 that stowed away on an American military plane because presumably they thought they might get to America, but actually it was flying to Okinawa in the big US military base in Okinawa in Japan. And we knew about this story, and Amga actually went to the National Library and we dug up the newspaper clipping.
Wow, all right.
And the cool thing about that newspaper clipping that was kind of sparked the whole idea for the film is that they interviewed... At the time it happened, they interviewed the elder sister of these two brothers. And basically she just said, I don't know why they did it. Like, why did they do it? And she said, I don't know. What does a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old boy, who knows what goes through their minds, right? So then we just decided to write a story imagining why on earth they would have done it. So we made everything up. So it's based on the incident that's true, and then the reasoning is all we made it up.
Yeah, and the story you guys made up is amazing. I loved it. It's emotional and it's also fun. Yeah, and it's filled with joy with these kids. Yeah, having fun, and it's trying to help out their little brother, and it's great.
Yeah, well, that's again similar. We always wanted to do not have it so that it was totally depressing. It's kind of a bit of a trick to the audience because it's like exciting and fun. And I always think of we talked a lot about our 90s stuff in these two podcasts, but the movie The Goonies, which is a really cool adventure movie for kids in the 90s, and this kind of movie where the kids are just having fun doing what kids do, and then at the end it's got kind of a sad ending. Which is a lot. Some people criticise us that because at the end they're all like, "Yeah, woo," and then you get this text and you're like, "Oh, yeah." but yeah, we wanted it to be like that, and so we made it one summer. And the good thing about making a movie with Mongolian young kids, is that they're so energetic and so cool to work with, and actually I think it's actually almost like an easy thing for a filmmaker. It's almost like it gives you added value of your film because they just immediately look cute and cool, and it's actually easier than working with adults.
because generally it must be tough to work with kids on a film, right?
It's not. No, well, in the UK it probably is because they have all these really lame, strict rules about about how many hours the kids can work and all this stuff. But here we're just like those boys in the film were just kick ass. We're just like, hey,
they're awesome.
And the funny thing is that all the way through making that short film, we set it in the 90s, which was actually also quite a challenge because nowadays, of course, Ulaanbaatar is covered in reclam and Prius, and so we had to find places to shoot where we could get angles with the old Soviet buildings and no reclams and no modern shits, as you might say. So we did it. We filmed it out in Songino and places like that. But the funny thing I was going to say is that all the way through the shoot, the kids were dressed in 90s clothes. And then when we had our first screening, and then they all turned up in like hip hop and like yo, nice. And I didn't recognize them. I was like, oh, it's him. Yeah, they totally changed. And,
one of the great things you did with the film was that too. And we, my friend and I, talked about it after the screening, was that you really captured the 90s with the film. And it's difficult because there are no sound stages in this country, right? Yeah. So you can't really do it, but you really made a great effort and actually captured it like it was actually 90s. It was great.
I'd like to make 90s movies again in Mongolia, and you might need to maybe go to AMIC centres or something to film a 90s movie. Yeah. But even like if you go to, I don't want to offend anyone here, but even if you go to Dolgion or Ednet now, it's like there's tons of, it doesn't...
the buildings and a lot of things look the same.
But if you hunt around, I mean, every period movie that's made anywhere in the world, I mean, where I live in London, actually, I oftentimes see a lot of films being shot, period films. And there's certain streets and certain places where they know that if they book it and then they work with the local authority and clear out all the modern cars and bring in some old cars. Yeah. So it can be done. And I think you could still can make 90s movies around UB, but it gets harder and harder all the time. I think we made that movie in 2015 and I think the Prius influx has happened since then. So it gets harder every year, but you were asking me that thing about we'd like more people to see the Wonderful Flight.
Yes.
There's a potential to maybe play it on the movie theatre
before the main
Odd
film.
Gegee. Was the reason we showed it to you guys at that VIP screening. The reason we showed it was that it linked to Odd Gegee, They Sing Up on the Hill, because we won an award from that, which was an award in the UK from a film festival called The Smalls, which gave us this Panavision camera package as the gift, as the prize. Yeah. Not the actual camera.
The short film one.
Yeah, the short film one, like a rental package.
Okay.
So then the best thing about it was that it kicked us up the ass, because it's really hard as a filmmaker, unless you're like a millionaire, which I'm not, and most people aren't. You're working, right? I work when I'm not doing this stuff. I'm just doing normal work, and so oftentimes people have projects for films that they want to do, and I had this ideas, and Amga had ideas, and we all have ideas. There's a million ideas around, but then making it happen is really difficult. And because we won that award, it just made us, it had an expiry date, the actual award. Okay. So we just went like, oh shit, let's just use it.
So you really had to...
We had to hurry, and then otherwise we might still be sitting here now with like a script. And I always say this one thing is that what is better, a perfect script that doesn't exist as a film, or an imperfect film, or just a film that exists? I'm more happy to just make it.
Just get it out there.
What I mean by that is not anything about what I mean is sometimes people work on scripts, they keep working on it because they're not happy with it, and then they never make it. So I think that there's a point where, like Werner Herzog, he says that he only works on his script for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow, that is crazy.
I can't believe it, but that's one of his quotes. I don't know if it's exactly true, but my point is that getting something that makes you go, just let's do this, it is good. So anyway, we would like people to see that short film, and we played it for you guys at that screening. And I was telling you before about there's an interesting kind of history about having a short film prior to, and it's where the word for the feature film comes from.
Yes, that's how,
Yeah, because basically in the old time in cinema in America and in the world before TV really became about in the 50s, people would go to the movie theatres and there would be a whole program of things to watch. And actually that program would loop all day. It wouldn't have set times.
It would just go on and on.
It would just go on, and people just turn up. And, you see in movies, people just walking into the old movie theatres at then the film's already playing. And basically you'd have the news reels, like the old, like Pathé News. They'd have old cartoons, like original Mickey Mouse and stuff. Then they would have like short films, which oftentimes would be like comedies, like Charlie Chaplin, or like little short films, or Laurel and Hardy, Buster Keaton. And then the feature movie, which was the movie that was an hour and a half or 2 hours long. Feature in English means the main part.
Yeah.
So that's where the word feature film comes from.
So basically, if you translate it to modern times, it's the headliner artist of a festival.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So the word stuck, even though nowadays you don't get all those short films and stuff. And basically it changed because of TV, because they didn't need the news.
Yeah,
and also it was Alfred Hitchcock who was the first director to ever demand that his films had a set time
schedule.
Yeah, so. And the first film that he did it with was Psycho. You know, the one because he thought that he hated that people were arriving to his film like literally people would arrive halfway through a movie, sit there, watch the second half. Then the loop would come round, watch the news, watch the cartoon, watch the short film, and then the beginning of the movie, and just sit there and maybe sit there 2-3 times. And Alfred Hitchcock hated that because you couldn't have the suspense and you wouldn't get the end part, be surprised. Yeah. Right? So
and also because of the storytelling. Right?
Yeah. So if you see old posters of Psycho, it says no admittance after showtime, which was a big deal then. Mm-hmm. People probably were pissed off at the time, and it meant that you had to be there at that time.
So you can watch the movie from the beginning.
And then since obviously that's now the norm.
Yeah.
You know, people don't rock up halfway through. I mean, sometimes, but anyway, that happened, and TV happened, and then so that meant that short films stopped being played prior to a feature film. Mm-hmm. But of course, you mentioned Pixar still do it.
They do that.
But apart from that, but it would be cool if it came back, having one short film and then a feature film.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Pixar do that. I don't know how long they've been doing that, but they've been doing that for a while now.
Yeah, they've been doing it.
And Disney bought Pixar, and Disney has started doing that with their animation films. And this year, Incredibles 2 had this short film called Bao by a Chinese filmmaker.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful, and that filmmaker's actually making her own feature length Pixar animation now. First ever female director to.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, you should. I don't know if you can find it online.
Yeah,
but
they might release the short film without the Incredibles, I guess, so you can find it.
Yeah,
Bao.
it's called Bao. Yeah, it's really cute.
Nice.
And
like about a dog.
I don't know. It's just BAO. I think it's the Chinese word. Yeah,
because I always used to. There's a joke that dogs speak in different languages, so they go like "ruff ruff" in America. In China, they go "bow wow."
I think "bao" is the sun or something. I have no idea, but it was nice. And then
the only person I can remember doing a short film before a film in live action recently was Wes Anderson, who we just talked about in the other before. He had that movie that was set in like Paris with it was like a short. I think it was before the Darjeeling Limited, and it was that he had that short film before a feature.
So I was thinking you guys could, if it's possible, right? You could screen Wonderful Flight before they sing Up on the Hill, and maybe advertise it as a double feature, maybe because it's not short as in 4 or 5 minutes. It's 14
minutes,
so that would be nice.
They sing Up on the Hill's 86 minutes, so that's quite short for a feature because it's got a lot, it felt right, the pacing of it when we were editing it, and adding the 14 minutes would be fine.
Yeah, it would be fine. It would take the total up to like hour and 40 minutes.
Okay, well, let's ask the movie theatres, let's push them.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I hope that comes to fruition.
We will ask them, but there's a business side argument to it that they have to fit in a lot of other movies. So so and also the short film Wonderful Flight will be on Sky Media and Univision and Didish soon after the screening runs out, right? So everybody will have the chance to see it whenever it comes out. We will talk about it definitely. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. We love it. Okay, so on this second episode, we're also going to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and Game of Thrones too.
Yeah, we're going to go geeky.
Yeah, so we're going to go some geek mode, fantasy world, dragons, ice zombies and orcs. So where did you I presume you read the books first.
Well, it's quite. For me, it's got a real... When the films came out, I was super excited because it has actually like a bit of a family history for us. That my father, because the thing about Tolkien is he wrote the books. He wrote The Hobbit first, right, for his kids. I don't know if you know all this stuff. He wrote it as it's
a children's book.
Yeah, he was a professor of ancient English literature.
Yeah.
So like the equivalent of like Secret History of the Mongols. Like he would be studying old English, very old, like going back almost to sort of splitting off into Viking kind of period and Anglo-Saxon. He was in there's a famous British poem called Beowulf.
Okay.
They made it into an animated movie a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes, with Angelina Jolie and everything.
Yeah. Beowulf is like the oldest surviving English piece of in the English language. But it's so old that it's like a weird kind of not, you know what I mean? Like a bit like Secret History of the Mongols would be written in an old Mongol.
Yes.
Yeah. So Beowulf, that period, so Tolkien was a professor of that. And he's from Oxford University, very learned guy. But at the same time, he'd been creating Middle Earth.
Yeah.
But it's very much based on kind of the legends that go back to that kind of Anglo-Saxon and Norse Viking period. So then he decided to write The Hobbit for his kids, just as a bedtime story, and that was in the 30s and 40s. But I think Tolkien really became famous in the 60s, and that was after he'd written Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings, of course, people have always said that what he was trying to talk about was the Second World War, like Nazism. And it, these kind of themes of like old rural places getting destroyed by like mechanized kind of, but he always said that that's got nothing to do with it. But anyway, so you fast forward to the 60s and that is like the hippie period, right?
Yeah.
So that's like the period of, smoking weed, LSD, hippie guy. And they all got really into Lord of the Rings. Just because if you imagine being like John Lennon smoking a joint in the 60s reading Lord of the Rings.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the Beatles, they actually loved it, and they wanted to make Lord of the Rings movie.
Wow.
They started making it with their own voices in it. Like Ringo Starr is like Sam and stuff. And it was one of those things that was called development hell, where they were trying to make it for ages, and it actually exists part of it that it turned into like they were going to make it half live action and half cartoon.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, that was their idea, and they were going to spend their own money on it. The Beatles were going to.
They were really passionate about it.
They were passionate about it. All of them, and all hippies were in the 60s. And so anyway, if you look on YouTube, you can find the old animated version. The old cartoon.
All right.
Yeah, but it didn't work out. But my father,
I'm glad it didn't.
Well, exactly. Well, I'm glad because they were nearly going to make Lord of the Rings movie in the 90s. And that would have kind of sucked in a way because it would have been compromised because of the technology. Yeah, right? It would have been it would have just turned out like not that great, like Willow or something. I don't know if you know that movie. So anyway, my father, he was in that period in the 60s. He went to Cambridge University and he's a big fan. And so growing up, he read The Hobbit like at bedtimes to my sisters and myself. Right. And I remember he would read it to us and put on all the voices. He'd do a Gollum voice and stuff. Wow. And so I wish I could remember what his Gollum voice was, because now I only think of Andy Serkis, of course. But it's amazing if you ever read The Hobbit, how much is the line, the things that the script that they wrote for the Hobbit movies, they took some lines straight out of the book. So, and I remember there's that scene where Frodo and Gollum are doing riddles. And my dad made a really big deal about those riddles when we were kids, and I still remember them to this day. Some of the riddles, like one of them is this, it's, what is it? A box without hinge, key or lid, and yet golden treasure inside is hid.
Oh, that's where they enter Moria, right?
No, that's where that's where Frodo's got the ring.
Oh.
No, not Frodo. Bilbo's got the ring, and Gollum in the Hobbit movie.
Yeah.
Bilbo's got the ring, and he's Gollum. They're doing like riddles with each other because otherwise Gollum will kill him. Yeah. I still remember those from being a kid.
Wow!
So I was so excited when they released the movies, and the thing about Tolkien is that the movies have been fantastic, and they managed to make what is absolutely huge.
It's amazing and unprecedented production in filmmaking history, right?
Yes. Yeah, but what I mean is that the thing about Tolkien, because he was this professor and he'd been working on Middle-earth as the whole thing since like 1910, 1920, when he was like a young man. Yeah. And they call it lore, the lore of it is so huge that, of course, Lord of the Rings is a fantastic job to base on those 3 books, but behind it all, more than Game of Thrones, more than any other fantasy, is why he's like the godfather of fantasy, is if you go into the deep like back end of it, like the other book is called the Silmarillion.
Yes.
The Silmarillion is like
a text, right?
Text, and I've read that, and that's real tough to...
Yeah, it's a tough read. I started it, I never finished it.
Yeah, it's real tough, but it's got all this like deep stuff in it. And then his son re-edited a bunch of his like papers that were found after, and the next book was The Children of Hurin, which I also read. And so there's like real deep stuff, and the book, the good thing about it is that Peter Jackson, they of course were all fans, and there's little parts in it that if you have read all the books and you do know the deep kind of back end, it's there in the films. I was just so blown away. The first Lord of the Rings film, where they explain about the rings, and then there's that big battle, and it's just like, oh man, you'd wanted to see that. I mean, everyone that's read Lord of the Rings waited like 100 years to watch that movie. And something was funny. Someone was telling me the other day, I love it that you guys have got those nicknames which are based on Tolkien for people here. Orcs.
Yeah.
Guys,
it just kind of became a thing. I don't know when, but it just kind of became a thing.
It makes a lot of sense. But then
it does.
What made me laugh the other day was that someone told me that there's a new thing that some guys call Mongolian people who went to live abroad.
Yeah.
And then they stayed abroad, and then they came back and acting all fancy and stuff. They're elves.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone else is men.
Yeah, you can see that.
But I like it because when my friend told me that, I thought, oh, shit, you really know your Tolkien lore. Because the elves in the Silmarillion, basically, they were living on Middle-earth, but then the Sauron, his boss, which is he's actually the second baddest guy. Before him was Morgoth. Yeah. Morgoth had this big war with the elves, and then a bunch of the elves just left. Yeah. Right? And there's different types of elves. So the ones that left and went to the west, but then a bunch of other ones just stayed, like the woodland ones. Yes. They never went to the other place. Yeah. And then the other ones that went to the west and then they came back. So there's a different type. So when this guy told me, that's what we call Mongolians who went to live abroad, we call them elves, I thought, that's some deep some deep shit.
Nice.
It was really funny. And those movies were great. And of course, Peter Jackson was the right guy to make it. And not a lot of people know what he had done prior to Lord of the Rings. Because if you've ever, I recommend that you watch his old movies. Your mind will explode, basically. Because he's one of the cool guys. I guess, like you could say, like Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi, yes.
Yeah, the Sam Raimis. These filmmakers who started and Christopher Nolan, same guys that actually started playing around with cameras when they were like kids. Never stopped. Yeah. So Peter Jackson, he made all through his young age, all through his teenage years, he made like these really fun little action movies with like really basic stuff. And then in New Zealand he made this movie called Brain Dead and Bad Taste. Yeah. And those movies are just hilarious, just like really crazy effects, like real crazy stop motion effects, like people's heads exploding, and like and like really funny jokes, and like there's a thing in it called the rat monkey. It's like half a rat, half a monkey. It's like crawling around and attacking people.
I heard a lot about Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah, Heavenly Creatures is good, but that was the film that I guess got him Lord of the Rings, because basically he got Lord of the Rings because he proved that he could handle drama and actors, but then he had this deep knowledge of like effects, because he'd spent his whole young age doing it himself, like making all these, like literally making effects by his own hand, like these weird like stop motion effects and stuff. And then he made a movie called The Frighteners, which I quite liked, which had Michael J. Fox in it. About a bunch of before he got Parkinson's. It's a nice movie, but so when he got there, and then of course making it in New Zealand was just an amazing thing.
New Zealand is such a beautiful country, huh?
Yeah, it makes me want to go there so much. But yeah, I like Tolkien, and then I when you asked me to come on and we thought we'd talk about filmmaking, you said, what else do you like? It's a fantasy in general, but I'm not like most people probably wouldn't guess, because it's like my sideline. But I'll recommend, so Tolkien takes us to Game of Thrones. Yeah. But of course the difference between Tolkien and Game of Thrones is that George R.R. Martin sort of took all the legends of, dragons, and, he took a lot of the kind of base stuff. The same thing with Harry Potter. Yeah. It all comes from Tolkien. But then of course George R.R. Martin took it and made it like adult.
Adult, and made it his own.
Yeah.
It's really different. You can see the inspirations and the influences there, but then again, it's really different. You can't really compare it. Like,
what the criticism of Tolkien is that it's kind of like a idealized idea of like a world that never did exist, or never could exist. The actions of people, they're not the men and it's fantasy, right? Yes. True fantasy,
it's high
fantasy, yes. Because people don't do what people normally do. And we talked in the first podcast about social realism, and I guess in a way George R.R. Martin is social realism, because the characters in Game of Thrones do what people do. Yeah. So it's like modern people in a fantasy setting. Yes. They're jealous, and they have sex, and they
betray each other. They fight for power.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the beginning of the story, in the book and the series, television series, they don't have magic. Like magic has died out, and it's been 100, 200 years since the last dragon died, and it's a legend. Yeah. Nobody really actually even believed dragons existed, and that's a really nice way to start the story. Really sets the tone for the rest of the series. Yeah. So it's not about dragons, really.
Yeah, because I always like that idea of. I always really like movies that play around with being between like a kind of sort of mythical legend time, and because if you imagine what it must have been like for humans when we were living like 10,000 years ago or something. And I just recently watched that movie Alpha, about the boy with the dog, the wolf. And I've always found it really interesting that people don't make more films that are set in human prehistory, which is like this kind of time but after like myth of like Bible myths or Viking myths but like what people believed then, they thought like lightning was magic, or the moon was magic, or and that's like where he starts Game of Thrones, right, where it's like just at the end of legend time coming into normal history.
I heard George R.R. Martin himself mention that in the medieval times, people actually believed in magic. And they believed in witches. They burned people. Yeah. Joan of Arc and everything, right? Yeah. They burned people because they believed magic was real, and sorcery was real, necromancy was real. Yeah. And think about that. That's crazy for now, but at the time, those beliefs were real, and a lot of Game of Thrones is actually based on that, and it's great, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that whole period is really interesting. I'm really looking forward to watching this movie called The Outlaw King.
With Chris Pine.
Yeah, which is about the famous Scottish king that battled us. I'm English, Robert the Bruce. But those that kind of historical movie isn't that far away from Game of Thrones, just with no dragons.
Yeah.
But I was going to recommend something to you as well.
Yeah.
Is that there's like a crossover between Tolkien and Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Which is the Earthsea Quartet by Ursula Le Guin.
Earthsea Quartet.
Yeah, there's 4 books, right? And they've never been made into films. Studio Ghibli made one into an animated movie, Japanese animated. And there was a really bad TV show made on them. But if you read these books, they are, I would say they're not like Tolkien, like too high end. But they're not quite like, they're not as sexy and stuff as so between them. And the way how I came to find this book is one of my other things that I really love is, I don't know if you know David Mitchell.
No.
So David Mitchell's a British author, and he actually went to my university. I went to the University of Kent in England, and so I followed him after that. And he, funnily enough, one of his books, he wrote a chapter that was set in Mongolia. I think he must have come up here, I don't know. And anyway, he wrote Cloud Atlas.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So that film is criticised, I think, because people, if that book is the craziest book you ever read, I just can't explain how, when you're actually reading it, how insane it is, because it moves through all these different times and then different languages and things, and it's really beautiful. And then they made the film, and people who didn't know the book thought, what the hell is this film?
I love it.
I
loved Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, I loved it. I shed a tear at the end when what's she called, Somni 491 or whatever she's called.
She had a statue. There, right?
When her lover is killed and she's just like looking down, and that's really. Yeah. But that book is great, and I love all his other books. He's written a book called Number 9 Dream, Ghost Written, The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet. He's got really hard ways to say stuff. Cloud Atlas. His latest one was called The Bone Clocks.
Okay.
Anyway, so I read an article with him, and he was talking about how he'd been inspired by fantasy when he was younger, and he talked about like the difference between Tolkien and George R. R. Martin, and then he mentioned these, and I thought, oh shit, if he's mentioning the Earthsea Quartet, it must be good. So I just started reading it. Actually, I'm nearly finished.
Okay.
And I'm loving it. It's really good. It's really
all right. Awesome.
Yeah.
At some point, I'll start that when I'm done with the Song of Ice and Fire series.
See, I didn't get into Game of Thrones for a really long time because I didn't want to. I was kind of busy working on this film and stuff, and I thought I don't want to commit to it. Yeah. I was putting it off because I knew once I went into it, it was so long.
Yeah.
And then someone gave me the first book, and I started reading like the first 20 pages, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And I just read them all in a row. And then I watched but I don't watch much TV, I don't watch, there's all the big serials that people watch. Like, I've only really watched Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. You watched two of the greatest.
Two of the greatest, but of course everyone says, oh, you're going to watch like Stranger Things and Narcos and all of them. But I'd rather watch films. And I worked out once that by watching Game of Thrones, I could have watched 40 movies. So it's like a commitment, right?
Yeah, it is.
But still, it's great.
But I would highly recommend Narcos though. Like, you should try an episode maybe. That's the thing. Like, Narcos is so well made.
Yeah.
And well researched that it just takes you back to those weird Colombian drug dealing days. It's amazing.
The Wire, and I know I've got a list of TV to watch, but I just keep watching movies, so I don't catch up.
I have this problem where I have watch lists of things, right? TV shows and movies, right?
Yeah.
That I have to watch, earlier ones or the new ones or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I end up watching some random movie that I've watched 1,000 times on HBO.
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating. And then I actually watched those movies, right, on HBO. And then after I'm done, I just get frustrated with myself. Because I could have watched something new, something that I hadn't watched before.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's just, there's so much, isn't there? But the books, so as far as I understand, they have translated the first 3 or 4 to Mongolian?
4. Cool. Yeah, the 5th one is in translation, and I heard that it's going into printing early next year. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
when we were making our film mod by Gegee, Namin was reading Lord of the Rings in Mongolian, Game of Thrones in Mongolian. So I was able to chat to her about that, which is fun.
Yeah, I heard. I actually talked to her at the after party, and she's a huge fan of Game of Thrones. Yeah. It was awesome.
But I love it that they translate them. It really means more people can read them. Yeah. Once you start on those things, you can't stop. And then, of course, we're all waiting for the books that are now totally out of sync with the show.
Yeah.
Which is
totally.
I
think it split ways after the third book, right? Third book and the fourth season, more or less. More or less it. And the fifth season has a lot of elements of the fourth book. No, I mean the fifth book.
Yeah.
But a lot of things are different.
Yeah, there's just a lot more. Of course, they have to squeeze everything down.
Yeah.
So they skip out some stuff, which is fine. Like, the
Targaryen stories.
There's another Targaryen.
Aegon, right?
Yeah, Aegon, who's out with the Golden Horde.
Yes.
One of those, he's out with them, and he's coming back and maybe going to take his
Golden
throne.
Company.
Golden Company. That's it. So they cut out all of that, and then when Tyrone goes out to Daenerys, his journey to her in the books goes on, and he does all these different stuff. So they took that out, which is fine. And they also took out the pirate family. My mind's gone blank here.
Greyjoy.
The Greyjoys.
Yes, a lot of the Greyjoys. Two. I think they counted out two of the Greyjoys, Victarion and the other one. Yeah,
and they're all the stuff's going on with them.
And Dorne too.
And Dawn, because that's right. In the book, what's she called? Marcella, yes. The daughter
of Jaime and Cersei.
And she just gets poisoned, and she's on the boat. Boom, she's dead. In the book, she dies a different way. Like they try and rescue her, and they go on some big journey, and but what can you do? You can't, you can't fit it all in.
There are a lot of people who hate the direction the TV series took, and I understand it though. Like, they have this unbelievable pressure on them to write this whole series, a new season in a year's time, and write it and go into production and post-production, and make it ready for release. And it's huge. It's huge. Not like other television series. It's huge, and it takes a long time.
There's another very practical reason that they say, the producers a lot, is they say, we got actors that were kids when we started.
Yeah,
it's like Harry Potter, and so those characters, if they was in pre-production for a year or two or three, they come to film it, they're going to just look like adults. They almost already do, right?
They're mostly adults.
They're
now.
adults, exactly. So they couldn't wait any longer, otherwise they'd have to recast or something.
And also they want to move on with their lives too. They started this project in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, and it's been 12 years now. It's gonna be 13 years of their lives, and and George R. R. Martin said that he wanted the series to be 13 seasons, and Dan and David said no, we're gonna finish it with 8, and that's it.
They'll do spin-offs instead. They'll do like what Better Call Saul did from. I think they're talking about spinning off the original, the Rebellion, Robert's Rebellion.
They said they're developing 5 shows.
Really?
Yeah, and they said Duncan Egg. There's a different book called Duncan Egg. Sir Duncan the Tall and Aegon Targaryen. Aegon Targaryen is Maester Aemon, his brother.
Yeah.
So that story will never make it into a TV show or book. And the Robert's Rebellion. They said they're never gonna make it into a TV show. But they're developing 5 shows. But one show is already greenlit by HBO, and they are all already working on filming it. And they're calling it The Long Night.
I see.
So it's going to be the first of the wave of you would call that.
So it'll be up in the north
of the White Walkers. Yeah, we have no idea what the story will be.
Well, it will be because where the White Walkers come from, right? The White Walkers were created by the children. So they could maybe make a movie. They could make a TV show set in like a really ancient time.
Yeah, they say it's about 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, so that would be when they, like the Fist of the First Men. When the first men came over, and then the first men wanted to take over the land, so they warred with the children of the forest.
Yeah,
and the children of the forest created. So it probably is that.
Yeah,
because there's all that. The first men, if in the book they've got names, I can't remember. There's like people talk about them and places are named after them.
Yeah, they could have Bran the Builder, the the man who built
literally building the wall.
Yeah, and so also they could have Blan the Clever.
Yeah,
and they cast one actor already.
It's probably that.
It's Naomi Watts.
Oh, nice.
She's guessing it. She's a great actress.
Yeah.
So it's...
Isn't there that tower? There's just in one of the episodes when they're in that tower and John runs away from the Wildings.
Yeah.
And Holder and all those guys are in that tower. That tower was burnt by some queen on a dragon.
No, I think Queen Nymeria.
Yeah, maybe
not Nymeria.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the Targaryen.
So maybe that's Naomi Watts. Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah, but same thing with Tolkien is that, of course, it's such a valuable thing for the studio to own that they have to dig back into like the Silmarillion and stuff, and probably if we wait like 10 years or so, other stuff will come out.
Amazon is actually throwing away, if I heard it correctly, $1 billion for a new Lord of the Rings series.
Right.
5 seasons.
Right, wow.
$1 billion.
Wow. For a TV series.
Yeah, for a TV series, yes. 5 seasons.
Well, that's because Amazon, that's obviously because they don't own Game of Thrones, so they're probably just wanting to do a Game of Thrones type show for themselves.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, and they bought the rights to it, and that $1 billion budget doesn't include the rights.
Wow.
It's just the production.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I'm gonna get there one day. But the Hobbit movies as well. I was going to say that of course, some people criticise that they made 3 movies from a tiny book.
Yeah,
and there was a few parts in it that were a little bit like going along slowly, but I loved it all because actually, what they did was there's a bunch of stuff in the Silmarillion. Because the Hobbit's, of course, before the Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And the Silmarillion comes right up to near the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And so the stuff that they brought into the Hobbit to pad it out is actually all legitimate Tolkien stuff. They didn't really make up anything. They just kind of worked it around. So it was cool.
For me, I think I really don't like the Hobbit series, but as a film. But the thing that stayed with me was Smaug. The effects that made it. It was amazing. It was mind blowing. And Cumberbatch was cool too. His voice was nice.
Yeah. It was perfect.
Yeah, it was nice. So, you've watched all the episodes of the show, Game of Thrones, or you do.
I only finished, like I said, I was quite late to it. I didn't start reading the books, and I read. For a while, I was this weird guy who I read all the books and didn't watch the show.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to have the characters' faces in my mind when I was reading the books. So I tried really hard, but then eventually you can't just like walk down the street in London without seeing posters of like Daenerys and Jon Snow and stuff in it. But reading the books without watching the TV show was cool because all the people, like the Hound and I had my own idea, and then when I watched the show I was like, oh, okay, they did it like that, and then I watched the show after, and I just finished not that long ago actually watching them all.
For me, it's the other way around. I watched the show first, and then I got into the books, and
it's also good.
Yeah, when you read the books after the show, you visualize it, with the actors in mind.
But it's just more. There's more, so it fills it out.
Yeah, I think it makes it an easier read. Yeah. For me, because of especially the first 2 books, are pretty much the same as the first 2 seasons.
They are pretty much almost the chapters.
Yeah. So it makes it easier. Then when the story splits, it's easier for you to follow it. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So who are your favorite characters?
Let me think. I never really thought. I quite like. Oh God. Well, everyone, of course.
A lot of people love Tyrion, right?
Yeah, of course, Tyrion. He's the funny. My wife loves watching it with Tyrion. I'm trying to think of a more off the wall one. I love the Hound.
Yeah. He's blonde.
Yeah, because he just the actor as well. He's in some cool old movies. He's actually in. Do you know Hot Fuzz?
Hot Fuzz, yeah, I know.
He's in Hot Fuzz, and I like him because he just doesn't give a shit. I mean, women. There's lots of cute women in the show. I liked. Well, they all die so quickly, so I'm trying to think who do I like that survives long. Yeah,
Oberyn must have been the highlight, right? It's amazing. Yeah. I love the actor Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. I'll tell you who I like. I like my favourite character in the whole thing, who makes me laugh, is the wilding with the big ginger hair.
Tormund Giantsbane.
Yeah, he's great.
You never fucked a bear.
Yeah, in the book he's great as well. Yeah. He always talks about stuff like that. He's great. And also in the Brotherhood, the Brotherhood, the priest. Who dies in the last series?
Right hand.
Yeah, gets killed by that like bear creature.
Bear zombie.
He's cool because he's actually the actor that played him is an old English comedian.
Oh, is it?
Called Tony Kaye, who did a load of great comedy stuff, and then. You know, the great thing about fantasy is it keeps us Brits in work because like Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, they keep casting them. I mean, and so you get like these old like guys that you forgot. You know, they kind of hadn't been around, and then they suddenly appear as a character. So he's Thoros of Myr. Yeah, he's cool. In the book, he's cool. Yeah, that was the other thing in the book that. Sorry, we're like geeking out now on book and TV differences. But the what's she called? The White Lady when Catelyn Stark gets killed.
Lady Stoneheart.
Yeah, they bring her back to death, and apparently there's a screenshot of something in the last series where there's like this character walking in the background, and there's a rumor that she might be in the next series. Yeah, because she's been brought back from the death. She somehow is the key to something, but I don't know. I don't think so.
The last season is going to have just 6 episodes.
Yeah, they're like movies, right? They're like an hour.
Yeah, they're like movies. So I don't think they're gonna have that kind of a small moment for. I don't think they're gonna have enough time to develop these storylines.
Yeah, and also I like Hot Pie.
Oh yeah, he's cute. That guy, the actor, he actually opened up the shop or something, right? Yeah,
pie shop.
Yeah. I don't know. Was it a pie shop or a cafe or something?
Well, in London we have a thing called pie and mash. That's one of our like traditional foods. Okay, you know, fish and chips and pie and mash.
That's probably what he opened.
Man. Pie and mash is like a meat pie with gravy. Mashed potatoes, and then we have these things called mushy peas, which are like mashed up peas.
Oh, okay.
And then all the gravy and the mashed potato all mixes up. And
every time someone from England, right, like yourself, say the word gravy, go back to hot pie. Yeah, he loves to talk about the gravy, right?
Exactly. He's walking and he's exactly.
I love that. All right, so that about wraps this up. And if you have anything left to recommend or talk about?
No, just it's great for having me to talk through all my interests. I never did it all in one go. They're all separate, and but it was great fun. And and I hope everyone can go and watch Gegee.
Yes.
And there will be more movies, I guess, to be made after that.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for those, definitely. And thank you for coming. Thanks. And having this great conversation over the last 2 or so hours. Yeah. And it's been great. And thank you everyone for tuning in for this special podcast in English, which are coming out maybe once in a month or something. I have no idea when I'm releasing this one, which you're listening to. I have no idea, but thank you for tuning in. Follow me at RustyRyan7 on Instagram. Find Ian on...
Just find the Oddbug Gegee Facebook page.
Yes, find the... on the Oddbug Gegee, they'll sing up on the Hill Facebook page.
And also, one favour that we always ask, when the film's going to release, it's really... We're hoping to get people to review the film on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. There is a page for it on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay. And, hopefully it will stay fresh. But, that's important for us, so... It's always a favour. Even if someone just writes one line, it helps.
So people can go to IMDb too, right?
IMDb.
Yes, IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes to review the film, rate the film, however you like them, and talk about the film. Most importantly,
exactly.
have a discussion.
Yeah.
That's really important for filmmakers and content makers.
Yeah.
I understand that partly too. So that's great, and really, it's my honor to have you here.
Thanks, Rusty.
Yes, it's great, and please, when the movie comes out, please go out to the theaters and watch this movie. It's amazing, and the songs will come out long before the movie, I imagine. And I love the songs, and so yeah, and look out for more of our contents. Every Thursday, our podcast comes out at 8 p.m. on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Every Tuesday, movie review on Dolgion. It's an app on iOS and Android, or you can watch them on Dolgion.com. And catch me on Instagram at RunstyRyan7. I recommend movies, music, books, comics, and that kind of my favorite stuff. Every Sunday. Today is Sunday, so I actually have a recommendation on. And that's pretty much it. And thanks for coming, and thanks for tuning in. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for everyone.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Great luck.